Hello, everyone. This is Tom Still from the Wisconsin Technology Council, and welcome to today's presentation of Shaping the Endless Frontier. And this is a continuing series that we have. And our first was August 11th. We led off with John Austin from the University of Michigan and others who made up a great panel to talk about the assets in the Midwest and how those can help really shape the U.S. economy moving forward. And today we're pleased to have panelists, including two of the main sponsors of the bill itself, the Endless Frontier Act. And I'll say more to introduce them in a minute. But you know what you're, I think, going to see during this presentation is the fact that this is a bipartisan effort, and that's something that is really important in today's society, in today's world. That with all the issues that we might be facing, the way to get through it is to work together. So now we're going to start with an introduction, video introduction from Chancellor Mark Mone of the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, which is one of two R1 universities in the state. And so we'll go with that here right away, then come back out with some additional information and introductions.
Welcome, everyone, to today's webinar on Shaping the Endless Frontier, a timely and crucial conversation. This event is being produced in cooperation with WARF, the Wisconsin Technology Council, UW-Milwaukee, and Michael Beth Strategies. I'm Mark Mone, Chancellor of UW-Milwaukee, and I'm pleased to be part of this important discussion. Let's extend a special welcome to our panelists. First, Congressman Mike Gallagher from Wisconsin's 8th District. Second, we have Congressman Khanna from California's 17th District. And third, Melissa Skala, investigator from the Morgridge Institute for Research. Dr. Scala is also a professor of biomedical engineering at UW-Madison. Importantly, Tom Still, president of the Wisconsin Technology Council, will be our moderator. Thanks, Tom. As a Research One university, UWM is engaged in the important business of research and development across a wide spectrum of disciplines, from engineering to biotechnology, and from freshwater to technology and power systems and controls. UW-Milwaukee's R&D efforts extend far beyond our three campuses, as we have developed strong relationships with private businesses and other institutions with the goal of transferring the best ideas into the marketplace. We're proud of our record in making the D in R&D actually happen. That's exactly why the Endless Frontier Act is so important to UWM and similar institutions, and especially in the upper Midwest. Our region has the capacity to research issues that affect people and society, and the industrial and commercial capacity to turn those ideas into valuable products and services. The promise of the Endless Frontier Act lies in its ability to fully harness the science and technology potential of our region and emerging centers of excellence such as Milwaukee, Madison, Green Bay, and beyond. Just as the original Endless Frontier proposal in 1945 propelled an unprecedented rise in American innovation, the Endless Frontier Act can build on that foundation and provide a powerful, renewed spark. I extend my thanks to the sponsors of the bill, especially Wisconsin's Mike Gallagher, and wish them luck as they move this proposal forward and enact it into law. Thank you once again, everyone.
Well, thank you, Chancellor Mone, and thanks for all you and your team do to enhance the economy in the Milwaukee region and well beyond. And we're going to hear more from the Chancellor later when we get into our Q&A portion of the program. So I want to expand a little bit on just a primer with the makeup of the bill itself, just so there's a little background for you members of the audience as we move ahead and hear from our members of Congress. So the Endless Frontier Act, $100 billion spread over 5 years, and it's all about bolstering science and tech innovation. Go to the next one. And it would create a new technology directorate within the National Science Foundation, which has been around for generations now. And it's all about advancing 10 key technology focus areas viewed as most important to American security and prosperity. And those are two kind of interrelated areas. Here are the 10. And if you look at these, you'll see that there are areas here, almost every one of them touch what we can and are doing in Wisconsin. So the bill itself is a great fit. And there's certainly other places around the country as well that do that. But it's a bill that really takes and builds on our advantages as a state. we can go to the next, yes. It calls for partnerships between universities, which we have represented here today, government, the same, and industry with 10 interdisciplinary research hubs that would be around the country. And so these would be all about transferring science and tech into goods and services while boosting those metropolitan, state, and regional economies. And I think that's key to the act itself, because it's going to take a nationwide strategy, and this is very much part of it. And so here are our sponsors, two of whom are with us today. Khanna from California. I'll say more about him in a second. Mike Gallagher from Wisconsin. Same with Mike. And two members of the U.S. Senate. So it's bipartisan and also bicameral, in the sense that all of the folks who are a part of it are really, really active in this. And so now, if Congressman Khanna is on and ready to go,
Right.
there he is. Welcome, welcome,
Wonderful.
Khanna. Well, let me tell the audience a little more about you, and thank you for joining. I know you're in California, so it's a little earlier. And
I'm actually in Washington.
Oh, you are?
We're voting.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, very good. So it's a little later. Okay. Well, Representative Khanna represents the 17th Congressional District in California, which is right in the heart of Silicon Valley. He was elected in 2016, as was Mike Gallagher, the Wisconsin member, who we'll have on in a little bit. And he sits on the House Budget, Armed Services, and Oversight and Reform Committees, first vice chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, and an assistant whip for the Democratic Caucus. And so, you know, one of the things I noted, well, I mean, his degrees are from Stanford, San Francisco State, and University of Chicago, where he graduated Phi Beta Kappa. And one of the things I noted, and this is so important, I think, to every state, but especially at Wisconsin, which is a big manufacturing state, you wrote a book, Entrepreneurial Nation, Why Manufacturing is Still Key to America's Future. So welcome, and I thought here maybe you can give us 5 minutes or so of why you support this bill and why you see it as a way of pulling together the nation's resources.
Well, thank you so much. First, what an honor to be on, and appreciate your leadership and the leadership that has come out of the state of Wisconsin. And I want to recognize Mike Gallagher. He has had great service to our nation as a Marine. We met during orientation. We're friends. Even when we disagree, I have such a respect for him. And we've published op-eds about reform in Congress together. And I'm really excited that we have a bipartisan commitment to this bill. Let me tell you why I think this is so important. There are two key objectives. One is to make sure that America leads in innovation and that we don't allow China or other countries to lead. The key to who's going to lead the 21st century is who's going to lead in the technologies of the 21st century. So you have China right now in Beijing and in Shenzhen and other areas putting billions of dollars, for example, in synthetic biology. Well, what is synthetic biology? It's taking food products, a lot of agricultural products, and making a lot of new things out of them, new medicines, new materials, new equipment. Well, I want our country to be doing that. I want our farmers to be leading in biomanufacturing. I want our tech companies, pharmaceutical companies to be leading in the next generation of biologics. I want us to think about what the 21st century materials are going to be. I don't want us to become dependent on China for that. Similarly in AI, similarly when you look at new technologies in cybersecurity, similarly when you look at advanced manufacturing and robotics, this pandemic has shown the vulnerability of our supply chains. I mean, why is it that America shouldn't be making masks in the United States? Why is it that we shouldn't have critical supplies in the United States? So that's what this bill does, but it does something even more important. When Vannevar Bush, after World War II, had the idea of the Endless Frontier Act, and he was brilliant, and he helped us win World War II, and he said America needs to lead in science in the 21st century, and that's how we're going to win the 20th century. And he was right, and we did lead in science. And in the height of the Cold War, science spending was about 2 to 3% of GDP. It's fallen to 0.6%. But one thing he didn't get right, there was a senator back there, Senator Kilgore from West Virginia. And Senator Kilmore said, no, it's not enough for the MITs and the Stanfords to get all the funding and the Washington. We need to spread out the funding geographically. Here's the key point, and Wisconsin knows this because you're in the top 20. 18 out of the top 20 universities in the world in terms of patents are in the United States. Wisconsin happens to be one of them. We've got great universities, great research institutions, not just on the coast. We've got them in Michigan, we've got them in Ohio, we've got them in the South. It's wrong for all of the innovation dollars and the concentration of those dollars to be just going to a handful of places. We would never have had manufacturing concentrated in just 3 or 4 cities. And so what this bill does is it says, let's invest in innovation and lead, and let's have the talent, the ingenuity for places like Wisconsin and Michigan and Ohio, all the great research universities. Let's take advantage of all our talent and not leave places behind which haven't participated in this new economy. And that's why it's bipartisan. I'm excited about it. Frankly think it's one of the most important things we can do for America to lead in the 21st century.
Oh, thank you so much, Congressman Khanna. It's you're absolutely correct, and I think you and Congressman Gallagher kind of represent a new generation in Congress that does look forward to working together, and it's also I think we really appreciate your national view, the notion that that all the various parts of this country have to work together. So if you can stand by here for a little bit, I'm going to bring on Congressman Gallagher, and who's also in Washington, so somewhere near you, and we'll hear from him for a little bit. So, all right, thank you, and let's stand by. And Congressman Gallagher.
All right, can you see me, hear me?
Yeah. Well, again, a member of the class of 2016. In the House of Representatives, serves on the Armed Services, Transportation, and Infrastructure Committees. I know there's no such thing as a former Marine, so you're a retired Marine captain, and you were in counterintelligence and intelligence and deployed twice in Iraq, and so you have been in and around the security world throughout your time there. And in the private sector, you were involved in energy and supply management. In Green Bay, and represents the 8th District out of Green Bay and that whole region, and degrees from Princeton and Georgetown, and some other work while in the service. So thanks for joining us. Same basic question to you as I had to Representative Khanna. Why this bill? What do you see in it?
Well, thanks, Tom. I appreciate that kind introduction, and it's great to be with you today. Thanks to WARF, the Wisconsin Tech Council, UW-Milwaukee, Michael Best, and most of all to my friend Khanna for taking the time to travel virtually to Wisconsin, and we stand by to welcome him to Wisconsin physically when that's allowed. And you're always invited to come to a Packers game, Ro, when we're allowed to go to Packers games in person.
As long as they're not playing the Niners.
Yeah, right.
The last time we played the Niners, it didn't work out well for us. I'd share that sentiment. Yeah. But I think just the idea that a Democrat, a progressive Democrat from the West Coast, and a conservative Midwestern Republican can not only get along but work together closely on major legislation should leave room for optimism in our politics these days, when we need some optimism. And just to add briefly to what Ro outlined, and he's right on all his points, in a lot of ways, I think my own view is we're in a similar position now to where we were in the formative stages of the early Cold War. We're at the early stages of a new Cold War. And in recent years, along almost every front, we've taken action to defend American innovation against the Chinese Communist Party's efforts to steal our technology. For example, we overhauled the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States. We strengthened export controls. We put malign actors like Huawei on the entity list. And yes, we've taken a harder look at CCP influence on our college campuses, including through Confucius Institutes and researchers associated with programs like 1,000 Talents. But, as the great foreign policy mind Vince Lombardi might have pointed out, a good defense only gets you so far. At some point, you need to put points of your own up on the board. And this is, I think, the big inflection in U.S.-China policy right now. There's no longer any question that we have a very large problem on our hands. There's a recognition that we've taken important steps in recent years, but now, over the past few months, what we've seen is a realization that we need to make a proactive investment of our own to partake in what some in the past might have criticized as industrial policy, to ensure both American technological leadership and the viability of non-Chinese Communist Party dominated supply chains across critical sectors. As Ro alluded to, I think this is perhaps our biggest lesson learned of the pandemic, how brittle our supply chains are and how urgent the need to onshore and nearshore and bring some of this manufacturing back to the United States is. And so you've seen emerging trend in bipartisan legislation supporting domestic semiconductor production, ORAN alternatives to Huawei, and of course, the Endless Frontiers Act. And I think this represents one of the most ambitious federal civilian R&D efforts in decades. As you described at the outset, it would provide $100 billion investment in 10 strategic technology areas over the next 5 years, get us back to where we were historically in the past. Also, reform the way in which the NSF is organized and how this money is awarded. And then, of course, promote the development of regional technology hubs through which the Commerce Department would award funds for comprehensive investments that I think would position at least 10 regions across the country to be global centers for research, development, and manufacturing key technology. And that recommendation flows directly from a landmark Brookings Institute study on spreading technology innovation across our nation so that it doesn't just cluster on the coast. In this, I would note that Ro, as the representative of Silicon Valley, is very much arguing against his own parochial interests, which is a testament to how he is indeed looking at this through a national lens and what is best for the country. And so I want to thank him for his leadership on this issue. I want to thank all of you for listening. And I'm excited. I think we actually have a moment here, almost regardless of what happens politically over the next couple of months, to push Endless Frontiers forward. I think people are waking up to the scale of challenge we face. And if we're going to win this competition, it's going to require people to reach across the aisle. It's going to require people in states like ours in Wisconsin to realize that they're on the front lines. You could be a researcher at a UW college and you may think you're insulated from the great problems of international politics, but guess what? You're not. You're on the front lines of this competition and we can't win without you. So thanks for listening to us and happy to answer any questions going forward.
Good. Before I go to our other guests, I'd love to just have a little conversation between the two of us about this. Representative Gallagher raised an interesting point for Representative Khanna, and you are in the heart of the Silicon Valley. And the Brookings Institution report and a similar report by the Chicago Council on Global Affairs both noted that there is a clustering effect in different places. Yet, you view this, I think, very holistically in terms of how this can help. And with 10 centers around the country, I mean, who knows? One of them is likely to be in the Silicon Valley itself. But just talk a little more about why you see a vital Midwest as being a part of this picture.
Well, that's a great question. First, I think it's important to take stock of the advanced technology industry. I mean, my district has Apple, Google, Intel, Yahoo, Cisco, LinkedIn. In the last 5 years, the S&P 500's growth, 90% of it has been driven by 6 of the big tech stocks. The median income of tech jobs, $80,000, is twice the median income in the United States. And that's not just technology of Facebook or Google. That's talking about technology in precision agriculture, technology in retail, technology in manufacturing. These jobs pay a lot more. The reality is that manufacturing, currently we have 12 million manufacturing jobs in this country. We have about 12 million tech jobs. They're expected to grow to 25 million by 2025. And yet you've had basically 90% of the venture capital go to California, New York, and Massachusetts. I mean, imagine this country if we just said we were going to have manufacturing, advanced manufacturing in a few states. We would never have had a broad middle class.
Right.
And you cannot tell people to move. I think that's insulting. I mean, I don't know people in Santa Clara who want to go cheer for the Green Bay Packers and want to move to Wisconsin. And I doubt there are people in Wisconsin who want to move to Santa Clara to go root for the 49ers. People want to live in the communities they grew up in. And it is, yes, they should have the choice to move, but they should also have the choice to stay and prosper and have access to good jobs in the 21st century. And so I think it's good for the country. It's good for regions that have been left behind, that don't have a stake. And then actually, I think part of the backlash to technology and the sense that there's this elitism is because people don't have a fair stake in the 21st century economy. But it's also good for my region because believe it or not, the cost of living has gone up so high. And so for people who are the working class, it's become very expensive and they're not benefiting. And if we were able to distribute the jobs a little more evenly around the country, it would bring down some of the rents, bring down some of the cost of living, create more healthy balance in my community and for the country. So I think having a focus on this is a win-win and critical in helping bring this country together.
Yes, very much so. Although I do think you could probably find a Packers bar even in Santa Clara. So
I know you can.
So Congressman Gallagher, sort of the reverse of that question to you. I mean, you represent a district, Green Bay, that historically has been really vigorous around manufacturing, is also emerging now in the tech world. And sometimes within Wisconsin, you can see, almost regional competition too, right? I mean, Milwaukee, Madison, Green Bay, the Fox Cities, the Eau Claire area in the Chippewa Valley. But you see this too as something to help lift the entire state. So your thoughts kind of related to what Congressman Khanna just said.
It always makes me nervous when Roe talks and I find myself vigorously nodding my head. And I'm worried. I don't know if he's convincing me of something or.
Not good for your primary.
Yeah. But certainly, I think Roe put his finger on what we've been dealing with in the Midwest for a long time, which is owing to both disruptions from trade and technology. And there's a debate about, whether it's the former or latter that's really hurt Midwestern manufacturing. There's just been a lot of economic pain endured by the middle class and a lot of industries that are struggling to evolve in a digital world. And we're realizing that a lot of programs that we rely upon, whether they're state government programs or federal programs like trade adjustment assistance, are, let's say, suboptimally designed at times to help people whose industries are disrupted and whose lives are upended. And so I think both of us are trying to think through how can we revitalize, but also transform a lot of these industries. And from a Wisconsin perspective, to me, it's not just a matter of making sure that we are, attracting jobs and welcoming, refugees from Illinois and other nearby states. It's not just a matter of making sure we can respond to all of the small and medium-sized manufacturers in our states who now are emerging from the pandemic and dealing with the same issue they were dealing with before, which is a lack of human beings that they can hire who can pass a drug test and have the skills necessary and a willingness to show up to work every day. It's also a matter, I think, of building off of our fundamental strengths as a state. There's a cultural aspect to that of humble hard work that I think we're all very proud of. But there's also a structural aspect of, we talk about the Wisconsin idea, right? Which, dates back to the progressive era of Wisconsin politics and the connection between our politicians and the UW system. At its heart, in my opinion, the Wisconsin idea means the UW system has resources that can be used to empower Wisconsinites through education and thereby help them economically. I think we need to think hard about how we revitalize and modernize the Wisconsin idea. And so the Endless Frontiers Act would be one part of that, right? And there's some exciting things going on. So, for example, I believe it's UW-Milwaukee that's the only UW system right now that's using the expanded charter authority that the legislature gave you to do cool K through 12 and K through 14 ideas. But I just think there's a whole host of issues where we really have an opportunity right now where, because of the high living costs that Roe referenced or because of a desire to root for better sports teams, Wisconsin could position itself, if we got our act together, to be a destination of choice for a lot of top-level talent, notwithstanding the weather. We can't compete on weather with Roe, but we have some unique advantages that we can leverage in order to really do some exciting things in our state over the next few decades.
Right, right. And it's all part of that really that mosaic of national strengths that we can help to leverage. So, what I'd like to do now is turn to two guests who are kind of boots on the ground around this, right? Uh, uh, I'm going to start with Melissa Skala, who is a researcher at the Morgridge Institute for Research at the UW-Madison. That's a private research arm there on campus. And Melissa, well, she's worked with other researchers around the state, which is, I think, a great compliment to her and others. She's really in the life sciences side, but so much of it's interdisciplinary. So, Melissa, thank you for joining us. And tell us a little bit about what you do, but why you think the Endless Frontiers Act could be something that benefits other researchers like yourself, regardless of discipline.
Yeah, this is the best pep talk for my job I think I've ever heard. People just going on and on about how important technology is. Yes, I'm an engineer, so my lab works across life sciences and engineering. We work on a variety of problems here at UW-Madison, and these problems require innovation in engineering or technology. So I focus on medical and healthcare challenges. So for example, my lab has developed new optical imaging techniques. So think, lasers, pew pew, and lenses to rapidly test cancer treatments for each unique cancer patient. So we work closely with the University of Wisconsin Carbone Cancer Center, and we identify an optimal path to recovery for cancer patients. My lab works on many things. We also work on photonics technologies for quality control and monitoring of biomanufacturing. So I'm happy to hear the congressmen both talk about biomanufacturing, which I think is an important future for us. So this is, as they mentioned, this is like traditional manufacturing because we want to cut costs, increase production. But in this case, we're making living products like cells that can attack tumors or tissues that can replace faulty heart valves, for example. We're also developing new technologies to predict preterm birth, which is notoriously difficult to predict, yet premature babies have a significant lifelong morbidities that could be addressed with better prediction technologies. So these are just a few of the things that we're working on as engineers in the life sciences. And overall, I think we can use our skills in engineering to overcome roadblocks in achieving long, healthy lives for everyone. So hopefully, with this big pep talk we've all had, we can all agree that these efforts are in the national interest. I think we're all on the same page there. But this kind of research is what I like to call a long game. So the challenges that we work on in my lab and in other labs in university settings are too great, and the risk of failure is very high. And so private industry usually doesn't take on these projects. So we work at the frontiers of knowledge. So we know if our efforts will result in a product or a solution, we just don't know. We're working to gain that knowledge. We do know we can design our experiments to gain new knowledge. Whether the results are positive or negative, we can count on a new discovery. And this is the key difference between federally funded research, which is what I do, and it is high risk yet high discovery, and technology development in industry, which is mitigated risk but achievable outcomes like products. So that's the difference. And public funding for university research like mine, specifically funding from places like the National Science Foundation that we've talked about, is one of the few ways that we can do this high risk research. So it's pretty key. So, lots of people ask me, why even bother with the high risk research? You could say, let's just go with the profitable approach that brings people solutions on a faster timescale. Unfortunately, we can't achieve these breakthroughs without a solid base of knowledge that we produce in federally funded research. So I like the analogy of a mine and a mill. Most of us are familiar with this paradigm. The federally funded research is like the mine and the company is like the mill. So breakthrough ideas usually come from federally funded research that is refined in a company. So a mill won't last long if there's no mine, but a mine is required to get the product to the market. So what I find so powerful about the Endless Frontier Act is that it supports both the mine and the mill to benefit innovation across the spectrum. So I think this is a really, as you said, holistic view of what needs to happen. So hopefully you're thinking, great, I believe in federally funded research, and it is great. And as we've mentioned, it's one of the reasons our country leads in innovation. So what is the problem? Why do we need this act? Federal funding for research has declined recently, but our talent is growing. And I personally sit on several review panels that decide which grants will be funded and which will be cut. And currently the funding rate is 10% for many of the research I do, engineering research, cancer research. So 10% is pretty low. And sometimes it's lower. And these are applications from people who have spent decades in engineering research. So healthcare research, and they have proven teams that are capable of amazing discoveries. So in my experience, at least half of the applications are worthy of funding, but we can only pick 10%. So sometimes entire fields of knowledge are in jeopardy, as the leading experts all compete for a small piece of that budget. So I'm most disturbed when I see this hard-earned expertise vanish as people leave federally funded research due to low funding rates. And the competition for federal research grants is too fierce to retain talent, to nurture discovery, and eventually this could catch up to us. So I'm hopeful that we can keep the inertia going for continued innovation, but an infusion of resources is needed to retain our amazing talent and for breakthroughs in engineering and science. And this is why I'm a big supporter, obviously, of this Endless Frontiers Act. So anyways, I know I'm a professor, I'm supposed to be long-winded, but I'm gonna sum up just 3 main points I want you to know.
All right.
One, research drives innovation that improves our quality of life. So without research, our lives would quickly stagnate both economically and socially. And personally, to me, research is synonymous with progress. 2, breakthroughs in technology require a long game mentality that's too high risk for most private companies. And therefore, these breakthroughs require federally funded research. And 3, currently, federally funded research is insufficient to produce them and support the many talented people who have a high probability of breakthrough discovery. So this could lead to a drain of talent and a broken pipeline for discovery that makes it difficult for us to reach our potential for innovation, which I think is great. So great pep talk.
Well, there you go. Well, thank you, Melissa. And I really like the mine and mill analogy because that does really get to the point that this research is not mutually exclusive. But at the end of the day, we want to make things that matter to people and the economy and the welfare of people and everything else. So that's really important. And by the way, Ro, if you look on the background there of Melissa's screen, that's a shot of Union Terrace on Lake Mendota in Wisconsin, so in Madison. So we hope to have you here live someday if you.
I'd love to.
Swing it.
Come have a
Beautiful
beer
state.
with us and we can go sailing. It'll be fun.
Not a live shot though, lest
No.
Melissa gets in trouble with Rebecca
No.
Blank. So just to be clear.
No,
I remember a long
not
time ago
live
when I
shot.
was in college, I had a friend at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. I remember when I visited thinking it was just the most beautiful campus. I mean, I don't think many people have actually been there and seen how gorgeous the campus is.
Yeah, you're right. It's it is a sight. Well, and I know we only have a couple minutes before Representative Khanna has to go. But Chancellor Mone, tell us what your thoughts are, and thanks again for your intro. Chancellor Mone, just so everybody who's just tuning in knows he's at UW-Milwaukee, which is one of 2 Research 1 universities in the state. And they're also really active in the economic development in the Milwaukee area and beyond. So Chancellor, some thoughts from you quickly, and then we're going to get to some questions from the audience. And a reminder, lob your questions in through chat so that we can answer those as we move forward.
Thanks, Tom. And Congressman Gallagher and Khanna, we're so grateful for your support. Nothing is more important in my view. This is the most important piece of legislation facing this country. Our prosperity, the economics, the livelihoods of so many individuals, as Professor Scala has shared. This is a turning point. This is an inflection point, much like what we faced at the end of World War II, that's absolutely critical. I love the bipartisan support. And Congressman Gallagher, great to see you again. You've been just such a super champion. Love everything you're doing. So thank you for that. And Representative Khanna, Congressman Khanna, nice to meet you. You know, historically, economic prosperity is rooted in what? It's really got to come from ideas. It's got to come from ideas, and they've got to be fused with talent and capital. But it's absent those ideas, we don't get anywhere. So Congressman Gallagher, your reference to the Wisconsin idea, that's really something that puts Wisconsin with our strong manufacturing base really in the forefront of a way to leverage a lot of this investment. That'll be my final point. But at the university system, what we're seeing is this is where ideas are the coin of the realm. This is what we have. The challenge with industry today is that a lot of industry is actually spending less on R&D. And if we don't have university investments, if we don't bring them together, we're not going to have what you see in Congressman Khanna's district, Silicon Valley. That's the idea. If you think about prosperity, Route 128 in Boston, Austin, Texas, we think about global centers for this. What you see going on in China today, what's happening, very concerning in terms of the advances around strategic technology investments, very concerning. So in terms of as a Research One university, and speaking on behalf of really all research universities in the country and partners that we've got, and that's a critical piece, we know it's those partnerships that this type of bill will help us swarm. And nothing brings researchers together around grants and possibilities for incentives like that. And I know Professor Scala, really that's the core of what I believe you're talking about, and what makes Madison and Milwaukee such research powerhouses is how industry wants to come and work with us, whether it's around biotech or a number of other things. In our case, the patents coming through our research foundation, the work we're doing in Lubar Entrepreneurship Center, and especially the types of things where we're prototyping. We've had a couple of hundred prototyping in the last 3.5 years. The prototyping we're doing for manufacturing from established companies, the big ones, Stratec, Rexnord, small ones, Cheetah bikes. I mean, Cheetah is the next Harley Davidson. I mean, this is going to take the world with these motorized bicycles. Love to have you all come in and ride on a Cheetah, but we're doing some great prototyping work with them, a lot of fun. But how about microbreweries? A lot of the technology is being prototyped in our prototyping center. So really, really great stuff there. So this is important. And my final comment is that this type of funding, it really has to be channeled. And that's the key, congressmen's, congressional representatives here. It's that type of support that channels it in those particular areas rather than just being ambiguous and unfocused. That's really going to advance AI, cybersecurity, biotech, the critical things where we need the both offense and defense to bolster things we've been good at, but there's a lot of new technology in front of us. Look at what's happening in China with 5G. It's just one example how far ahead they are of us in that, and what that means on a lot of different fronts. So thank you for your great leadership and for having me on this panel today. It's a real honor to be here. Thanks.
Sure. Thank you, Chancellor. Well, before I want to direct a question from Buckley Brinkman, who's with the Wisconsin Center on Manufacturing and Productivity, and its related organizations, Wisconsin Manufacturing Extension Partnership, which of course in California have the same basic things, and others can pipe in on this as well. He just wants to make sure that manufacturing is somehow not overlooked in all of this, that eventually these kinds of dollars will come home to roost, and as Representative Khanna said at the outset, into jobs for people that really need them in sectors where we already have a strength. And so how do we make sure that it remains focused in that way?
Is a question for me?
Yeah, I'll just start with you because I know you have a limited amount of time.
Well, I still have about 10 minutes, but okay. I love the manufacturing extensionship partnership. In fact, I wrote about it and how it needs to be expanded in my book. I was at the Commerce Department for 2 years, and there's no doubt in my mind that we need manufacturing and advanced manufacturing in our country for national security reasons, because these jobs have a multiplier effect, because these jobs pay more. But I view technology investment as complementary to manufacturing. First, as people in Wisconsin know far better than me, I mean, manufacturing output has actually quadrupled in the United States because of our productivity advantages. The challenge has been that the jobs haven't kept up, both because of automation and some because of bad trade policy. But I believe the more we can lead in advanced manufacturing in different sectors and integrate technology to be able to customize products, to be able to do the last mile assembly, to be able to do the type of precision manufacturing that other countries can't. I mean, people always talk about Germany and Japan. They forget that American manufacturing, our worker productivity is 1.5 that of Germany and higher than the productivity of Japan, 6 times the productivity of China. And so that kind of technology investment allows for that. The final point I'll make, and I think this is really important, this is not just about creating jobs for those who have college degrees or advanced degrees, though that's important. It will create a tremendous amount of jobs, even for those who don't go to college and have other skills. And the reason is, Enrico Moretti, this economist, has talked about a 4.5 times multiplier effect. When you have in innovation sector, it's bringing in money to a region instead of all the money going out, which is right now what's happening because we're exporting all this stuff and money is going out of Wisconsin. An innovation industry brings their money in, and then people can spend it on building things. That creates construction jobs, lab technicians, they're jobs for the healthcare industry, for education industry. So it creates good jobs more broadly, and good jobs not just for those who happen to go to college. And I think it's really important that we emphasize that this is going to create jobs across the spectrum.
Absolutely. And Representative Gallagher, I thank you so much, Ro, for that. Representative Gallagher, I'm going to assume this is kind of one of the points that brought you and Representative Khanna together around this bill.
I think this is actually a version of the first conversation Ro and I ever had 4 years ago when we were at the freshman member of Congress retreat. I think we were watching a presentation on macroeconomics, and we happened to be sitting next to each other. We didn't know each other, and we just started talking about this debate about the decline in manufacturing jobs and the disparity between that and manufacturing output going up. And I kind of was like, wow, this guy's really smart. So that's kind of that our entire friendship. And then we realized we agreed on some other kind of reform proposals, like term limits and whatnot. But that's where this all started. And just to address the question, we do in the bill, if memory serves, require the Secretary of Commerce, when designating regional technology hubs, to coordinate with the Manufacturing Extension Partnership, the Manufacturing USA program, so to make sure that they're keeping, each other's equities in mind. And so at least our intent there was to ensure that when we're designating regional technology hubs, we at least have that manufacturing perspective in mind. And let's say, we had a regional hub in Wisconsin and most of that was going towards our level 1 research universities. We'd still want to ensure that a UW-GB and colleges like that are seeing some of that value as well.
Yeah, very good, very good. Let's make sure we bring back Professor Scala and Chancellor Mone back live, and so they can, there's some other questions here we want to pose. One that's related to what you just talked about, Representative Gallagher, is how will these research centers of excellence, the 10, I think, that are envisioned by the bill, work to benefit the particular district or geography that they're in? Is it going to be similar to like what the Federal Reserve districts look like? In the sense that they really try to focus on some of the geographic regions in which they operate. Oh, are you there? Hopefully. Oh, there you are. I think I hear you.
Was that for me or who is that?
Yeah, that's for you for just starting off, and then we're going to go bounce around to some of the others for any perspectives.
Well, I guess the first point I would make is that let's say you had a regional technology center in Southeast Wisconsin. A rising tide would lift all boats. And, at times the various UW comprehensive are competing for resources, but I tend to think that every comprehensive would benefit from a regional technology hub focused in Wisconsin. I would also hope that a lot of the explicit coordinating features that we built into the bill, some of which I've referenced before, would ensure that the needs of those colleges would be taken into account. And I do think, and I know this is a controversial position, I do think if we just look at the impact that coronavirus is going to have on higher education in general, I think it should be a wake-up call for all of the UW entities to think about what their sort of superpower is going forward, right? There's going to have to, I think, have to be some degree of specialization going on among the various comprehensives in order to have a more diverse ecosystem. And so maybe this would force that. I don't know. Again, I know that's a controversial topic on the Board of Regents and things like that. But you don't want GB doing exactly the same thing that Whitewater and Eau Claire are doing. You want GB, for example, to leverage our unique position on the Bay of Green Bay right there and all the advances we've made in ag and clean water and things like that. I just think there's a way where not only a rising tide lifts all boats, but the different comprehensive can leverage their unique strengths, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it totally does. And there's a certain regionalism there. And here's something for both well, for all of our panelists, but I think in California and Wisconsin, there's some similar higher ed structures. There are some of the big campuses and then some regional campuses, like, as you just noted, a UW Green Bay, Eau Claire, and Oshkosh in Wisconsin, similar structure in California. Will the act allow some of those dollars to seep down into those other institutions?
Yes, I mean, I think what's really important about the act, and like Representative Gallagher and the other experts also weigh in, is it's a very bottom-up approach. It doesn't say that the Secretary of Commerce and Congress sitting in Washington are going to be able to decide how a community in Wisconsin or in California are going to become a hub for advanced technology innovation. What it says is, let's look at the research universities, let's look at the community colleges and other colleges, let's ask local private industry, let's ask the mayors and the elected officials, and have them come up with a plan for what it's going to take to be receptive to local industry. So, in Wisconsin, they may not want social media companies. They may think much more, let's focus on biomanufacturing, or let's focus on something that related to advanced manufacturing. In Washington, it could be around timber processing. And the idea is very much to give local directive and not have this view that somehow you can impose technology from the federal government.
Right. Chancellor Mone.
So, this is a really critical question in terms of getting the best ideas into the marketplace. And I want to give two examples of how I think this could work particularly well. The Freshwater Collaborative is a UW system partnership that has recognition that all of our campuses are on either a Great Bay, a river, or estuary or lake, or lakes, as we see in the background of Professor Skala's picture. This creates, based on the kind of work that we've been doing, both in terms of the academic teaching, but also the research, it's one of our superpowers as a state. Where do we have that kind of concentration of education and research, the types of things that we're doing to solve the dead water zones, the agricultural runoff, the well contamination, but also lead pipes, and also, on the positive side, all of the things that we're doing in the COVID world, looking at wastewater treatment, looking at early identification of COVID outbreaks, just amazing activities around the fresh water, which is a critically important thing. And we have figured out mechanisms to bring the different expertise so that we're not redundant, so that we can take advantage of the different things that are happening. How we have a research vessel out of Milwaukee that can be the semester at sea for a lot of students that wouldn't otherwise have those opportunities. But the other things are, we're really good in Wisconsin at partnering, higher ed, partnering with industry, but partnering also hiring with each other. So we have, for example, the Northwestern Mutual Data Science Institute. That's a $40 million initiative that has Marquette, a private university with UW-Milwaukee, and Northwestern Mutual building out a tech hub around talent, around ideas in data science. And that's really critical to this type of bill. A dozen different areas, really all those, the broad umbrella of all data sciences areas where we're solving problems, advancing research, creating knowledge, writing the new textbooks of the future, as well as training a lot of people, both existing talent and new talent entering the workforce. So those are the partnerships that I think could be leveraged and reinforced dramatically with the additional type of funding. That's really what's needed.
Right. Let me get a little bit into the weeds of the logistics around the bill. Because again, it's going to take bipartisan support for something like this to pass. Two questions. Is there $100 billion out there? I mean, for this to be done? Because, there's been a lot of tests on the nation's resources of late. And second, how do you go about convincing your respective colleagues that this is a good thing to do? So we'll open it up either Mike or Ro.
Do you want me as the go for it?
Well, like I said, so that I'll hear Mike's answer, and then we'll have to jump off. So I think we have to distinguish between investments that are productive and that have high rate of returns, and those that are not. And there are philosophical disagreements on what we need to do in terms of supporting Social Security or Medicare or social programs. But there should not be philosophical disagreement on investment that actually has extraordinary rate of returns and then actually is going to not pay for itself many times over and be critical for our national security and our competitiveness. And I think that's where we can find common ground on this legislation. And I think it requires compromise. On the Democratic side, it says, look, we really have to prioritize innovation and job creation in addition to issues of fairness. But this is a place where we can lead. And on the Republican side, I think it requires a sense of, yes, there are areas of spending which have been uncontroversial in this country, which President Eisenhower talked about, President Reagan talked about with the semiconductor industry, that that is critical ingredient to our innovation. I'll just end with this. I mean, look, I have such sincere appreciation for Mike Gallagher, because I can tell, not just because he's a Marine and the contributions he's made on armed services. I mean, he probably won't brag about himself, but I mean, he really shepherded legislation on AI and cybersecurity. He's been working on a commission on that. But I'll tell you what gives me hope in this country. My father was an immigrant. I was born in Philadelphia. He came in the 1960s to study at the University of Michigan because he had an engineering background. And when we look at a fundamental question, whether people want to come and work in the United States to be innovative and creative, or whether they want to go to China, almost anyone would rather say they want to be in the United States. We have so many assets as a nation. We have so much going for us in terms of our innovation, in terms of the diversity of thought, in terms of having literally the smartest people from around the world in the United States. And I think if we make this investment, I have no doubt, and we find ways to collaborate, we don't mess it up in Congress, we do our part, that we'll lead the 21st century. And so for me, this is an issue that transcends politics and is really something that I want to work with Mike to get done, regardless of who's president.
Very good. Well, thank you, Representative Khanna. I know you need to maybe sign off at this point. But thanks for all your contributions. Thanks for being with us today. And thanks for what seems to be an incredible amount of embedded knowledge about Wisconsin on your part. So that's really great. So thank you again. Congressman Gallagher.
Well, again, as Rose signs off, I want to say thank you to him. I have been to Levi Stadium in Santa Clara, Ro.
Wow.
So my only criticism is that it's really nowhere near San Francisco. In fact, it takes a long time to get.
You're touching on a local political dispute. They wanted to rename it Santa Clara in my district, but I doubt that's going to happen.
But we'll welcome you to Green Bay soon. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Quickly on the cost issue, of course, $100 billion is a lot of money. It is $100 billion over 5 years. But again, I think if you look at this within the broader historical context of what used to be our investment in R&D, you quickly see that figure is not as astronomical as it seems. And I think while Ro and I might disagree on some of the less productive uses of federal funds and where we might need to get that money from, we're in alignment on the basic idea that R&D is an area where you do need the federal government to get involved and where the returns over time can dwarf the initial investment. And the final thing I'd say is, I think right now we're learning in the midst of a pandemic where the federal government has had to spend $3 trillion. I mean, actually, it's way more than that if you factor in all things you know, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure here. And my worry is that the world in which we don't lead in these key technological areas is a world in which we're going to have to waste a lot of money struggling, perhaps futilely, to catch up when it's too late. So, yeah, again, I do think we can and should make this investment.
Very good. Some other logistics for you quickly. Where is the bill right now? I mean, I know how it works. I mean, things can be proposed and they can carry over from one session of Congress to the next. Is it up for any hearings or anything in that motion, or is the kind of the election process got that on standby for now?
Yeah, well, it's somewhere. Yeah, in Schoolhouse Rock, they don't describe the stage at which the bill sort of just sits, waiting for a committee hearing. But it's been introduced in the House. We have, I think, 9 or 10 co-sponsors, and it's been referred to the House Committee on Science, Space, and Technology. A similar process has happened in the Senate, and so really right now we're trying to get as many co-sponsors as possible. So for those of you listening, if you call your congressman, the bill is HR 6978. Ask them to get on board. I really want more participation from the Wisconsin delegation in particular. I don't think we have anyone else from the Wisconsin delegation, but we should, both Democrats and Republicans. And then hopefully the next step would be, once we have enough co-sponsors, we'll force a committee hearing and go from there.
Yeah, we'll get those bill numbers out to our audience so they can help and better inform some of your colleagues about the need to get behind this. So, Professor Scala, quickly, a question for you. How can we help policymakers better understand this long-term long-term need for research, and how then that leads to applied research? I assume you and others are doing it every day, but
not as much as you would think, actually. I think the congressmen were really good speakers to this point. Researchers kind of like to do their thing. And we're not always great about getting out there and saying why we're doing this and why it's important, but we have passion and we apply all our skills, to try to make this a better place. And I don't know. I think what I do is I go to schools and I talk to children about it, to get them excited about science and discovery. And I think that just grows from there. I think humans are innately curious and they actually really do love this stuff. People want to improve their lives. They want to improve the lives of those around them. And if you frame it that way, I think everyone can get behind it. I mean, it's something we're all passionate about, but you just have to find that fire in them and remind them it's there.
Very good. So I want to give everybody just a minute. We have some other questions, and I'll get those around to our panelists so that perhaps they can answer them individually as well. I know that we'll make this available. WARP's going to make sure that this is available for people to see. But just quick 30 seconds as we close from everyone about what happens next. I'm going to start with Chancellor Mone.
Well, I have been talking with all our congressional reps and Congressman Gallagher, to your point, both on the Dems and the Republican side, urging them to support this bill. It's that critically important. So absolutely next step. We will continue to do the same. Tom Lujack and I are dogged about this. It's just that important. As I mentioned earlier, economic prosperity, this is in all of our best interests. It only happens when ideas come together with industry and healthcare and the talent and capital that's needed to really put this together. It's both an offense and defense play. Love the bipartisan support. And I'm going to reinforce something that Congressman Khanna said. This is bigger than politics. This is our future in so many ways. So I'm bullish on this, and anything I can do, please let me know. I'm there, Congressman Gallagher. Thank you for your leadership. Critically important, and Tom for putting this together. Really important topic for all of us in Wisconsin. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Professor Scala, closing thoughts.
I'm just so happy to be here. I mean, I think this is a fantastic idea. I think this is the dream, right? When we all get into science, we just hope we can do something that will make the place better. And I think this is one of those key pieces that we need to keep going. And I just want to echo how great the people are who are doing this research and how immensely talented we have. Fantastic engineers and scientists in Wisconsin, but across the country, and they're passionate. And they want to do their job and they just need the resources to do so. And I think we'll like the outcome.
Yeah, yeah. And I think a lot of people will be amazed how much work there is between scientists on different campuses, not only within Wisconsin, but in other places all around the country, including California. So that kind of cross-fertilization is taking place every day. And Congressman Gallagher, closing thoughts to you.
Well, I just want to thank all of you for being part of this. Prior to running for office unexpectedly in 2016, I was actually an aspiring academic. I'd finished my PhD and was hoping to teach at UW-GB while preparing my dissertation for publication. And then politics got in the way of that. But I did just bring that up to say how much I truly believe that we're lucky as Wisconsinites to have that, not only the UW system, but that spirit of partnership that was referenced earlier, that I think is at the heart of the Wisconsin idea. And that's something that we can't take for granted. It's something we have to nurture every generation. And supporting free inquiry and innovation strikes me as a national security imperative right now. And I just say, as someone who spends a lot of time in Congress focused on defense issues, U.S.-China competition, this isn't just a matter of economic prosperity. This is a matter of national survival. And so I thank you all for being part of this and taking our efforts seriously. And thanks for all the work you do.
All right. Thank you, Congressman. And same to you for your work and making sure you're adding to the fold. That sounded like a great benediction there at the end. So really appreciate it. So if we could go to thank you again, panelists. If we could go to that closing slide, thanks to all of you. Here's just a little bit of information for everybody. Links to today's program, as well as August 11th, which preceded this, can be found at wharf.org. And so thanks to WARF for all they've done to be a part of this. And there's some context here for our panelists and myself today. You can see the sponsors down below. I promise you, we're gonna follow this. We're gonna make sure that this is something that is not just left to sit out there and simmer, because it's so important to the state, it's so important to the region, and to the nation. And we've got a great bipartisan start on it. So thank you all, and we're going to close for today, but hopefully we'll hear and see more of you. Thanks again. Tom Still signing off. Bye-bye.